Instagram, hi on YouTube, and then on Facebook. And today the question is to, Simone told us that we have the innate abilities inside of us. They are given to us. So why can't I access and utilize them? Why does it need training? So I definitely have been thinking about that, and I found hopefully good answers for you. So first of all, so why can't we just use those high-level abilities as the majority of people would like to do so? I definitely get that. I definitely would like to also, how I say, it would be easier if we would know the answers more clearly, then everyone can go and get it because that's something very special that we have as human beings, right? So we know what we want and what we need, and we can go for it. All right, so in general, in ancient times, there was definitely a lack of understanding about our special abilities. So, and I mean, we already noticed that even till this day, there is not a lot of clear or clarified science, even in science, what our abilities are, and therefore there has not been really finite way that everyone can follow has not been established yet. And there are several reasons that I will go into today. So the most people, just plain and simple, they get suspicious when it comes for paranormal abilities or high-level abilities, however you want to call it. And that is a problem that, when it comes for researching, that, we have and we are facing now, because there needs to be something established, isn't it, right? So Synec Qigong science has already taken steps as a preliminary step to lay the foundation. And I'm basing my information here today also on the information from my teachers that I'm actively in training and still in training with. And so that's from the consciousness community, worldwide consciousness community. So the information I'm presenting are based on Synec Qigong science by Grandmaster Pan Ming, by my own experiences, and of course I try to give you some rounded wrap-ups so that you have an understanding. Why do you really need a training when it comes to access your so-called innate abilities? Well, yeah, if you have given them or if you got them, so why can't you use them? I really think it's a very good question. So let's more deeply go into that. So first of all, our abilities are not really apparent. So they're not really like, here, this is how you are and this is what you can use. So they are not really right from the get-go for everyone accessible. So we have a mind oneness entirety in this area here. So that includes the brain cells, the brain itself. I mean, the concrete matter, the substance. That includes the field around, and this includes the bigger field that it's connected to. So this ability or this mind oneness entirety is able to receive and send information. So that's a really high level. I mean, you have that, you know that you can experience your outside world, and it's, you can receive whatever the external world is presenting to you. And if you don't like it, you can send information, means you can make changes. So let's say this, most people, when they use their ordinary senses, are not able to use that high level ability. So that is because we have actually 4 reasons that block us from experiencing fully your abilities. So one of the reasons would be that the ability of the mind oneness entirety is blocked, simply is blocked, and by our human energy, so to speak. So there are different levels of chi, vital energy, life force energy, and the human body's chi is different than the mind oneness chi as an entirety. So we know that we have brain cells, right? So we know that the chi of the brain cells, when it becomes more sufficient or more fine and dense in its energy, then that mind oneness has been created. So we have the ability sitting here on top of our brain, so to speak. We have the ability to think. So the function takes place actually in the head. So that is something that most people may not realize, even though with that entirety, with that ability, with that mind oneness ability that can, go through everything, that you are able to go through extreme distances just with thinking, with that thinking ability, right? So, but here we have, certainly a little block that is actually put in as a protection. So that block is around the skull. It's a chi field that's created in order to protect and block off too much of outside information coming into that state of oneness, and mind oneness entirety state. So because it's very pure and very even, so if too much of information would come from the outside, it would create an internal mess, so to speak, right? So it is actually for our protection. Yet it is something that is hindering to receive or directly connect with the mind oneness, with that entirety. So you are blocked in that sense, and we usually use, because it's not a direct connection possible, we usually use our senses and our motor nerves. So, and that's what we have been trained, right? So we call this with familiar intelligence. So through those senses and the motor nerves, we are able to experience our outside world. So the problem is you only get partial information, right? So maybe your eyes are picking up on something that is, just a part of the information, of the entire information of the outside subject, or no, it's an object, sorry, from the outside object. If you just listen to something, that would be a partial information, right? If you taste something and so on, you get the idea. So the problem is really that those are partial information, and therefore you're not getting the full, the entirety of the information that's needed in order to, make the right assumption about what's out there. Right? That's one reason. So, it can be overcome and can be trained. Yet, the second reason is what's coming, and also in our way to really apply and be able to experience our paranormal abilities to the fullest. It's depending on our distortion and fixation. So on our fixed ideas, habits, concepts, how we have been actually building a form of a framework for our life, and how we refer to life. So that has actually gotten here in the brain a kind of a framework that you are relying on. And if, well, this is not based on paranormal abilities to pick them up, then there is a missing framework. So as you have been trained in a certain way, therefore, the other information will be blocked because they are not picked up by our brain's framework. So we are mainly trained and have been blocked by the chi field of the head, so to speak. So that chi field, what's around the head, the skull, you noticed, hopefully, when babies are born, they have that area in the front of the head, fontanelle area, which is more open. So you know that this will close over the first couple of months while the baby is developing. But in this way, it still has a very direct connection to the external world, so it receives information more fully. So that's why we say babies are so fantastic in receiving information, and they are more pure in that sense. And that's the magic there, right? So the baby is still receiving direct information from the external world. However, the child is not trained to establish a framework for those information. So for those high-level abilities, the patterns are not established if there is nobody training in the right way. So if there's a lack of guidance, that's an issue, right? When we grow up, nobody helps us to repeat that, so that the stimulation in order to create that framework is constantly there. Well, that's an issue why it's not happening, right? And then if the language is also not used in order to get you to apply it, then, well, those are all reasons why it cannot develop. So this is actually, when we look in our history, in our evolutionary process, that was actually a long-term development. We have used our senses, and through the senses we made assumptions, and then we explored how our world around is, and based on that we created then society, right? So community and so on. So we have been mainly using our senses with partial information to set up our how life is. It doesn't mean it's always like that, right? So, and that was probably an issue that we needed to go through, or we will need to go through in order to access our high abilities, high level conscious abilities. So, well, the objective world needs to be completely reflected and also confirmed by what your insight experience, so by your subjective world. So so we could have wishes, we could have what do you call it, needs. They turn into wants, right? So they are all good. So and that is something very special for us. We are able to influence our surroundings, our objective world around us, because of we have that ability. we are able to recognize that we need something, and we are able to plan and to go for that. That is a very specific evolutionary step that we as humans came through, and so therefore we are able now, with that brain that developed due to all these things, we are now able to influence our objective world and do it to that. So that can be done in a way of using, of course, our ordinary senses with the partial information, so to say, or this could be done through the high-level consciousness abilities. Well, let's look at history. How has that happened? Well, if a king wanted a country, right? So what happened? Well, this is all based on probably more the ordinary abilities. So I want something, I exclude you, and I base my experiences and my information on what I experience, and with my partial information. Right, so we know how this ends up. Well, we have seen this thousands of times in history, so it's time to create a new level of human being that is able to use the high level abilities they have in order to get a more full picture. And that needs to come into all of our, social structures. Just look at the justice system. It is tough. I hope that more and more people are waking up and using their abilities. So the way how paranormal abilities work is directly through the mind oneness entirety. So it's a kind of a conscious activity. And in human culture, that could not be understood very well. So when someone had those experiences, it's coming through them, right? So those abilities, that often caused more suspicion or the assumption of there's an outside something like a god, or that was the beginning of the development of superstition as well as religion. So they understood there is something that is bigger than the human itself. So until now, science is still based on picking up things with familiar intelligence. So that has not discovered the laws of the high level intelligence yet. It's on the urge to it, so I'm really happy for that. But while we still are lingering in the preliminary steps, so our abilities are still very limited and very much imprisoned by our own frameworks. So therefore, it's still hard to establish a framework, so when you are coming from a high or from a mind oneness entirety level and high level consciousness, how do you want to talk to someone who hasn't experienced that yet? And how do you want to bring then a framework in that they don't even grasp, right? So that is a difficult task. So that requires that we are practicing and training so everyone has an experience and therefore is opening up and expanding their limitations to broaden and bring more objective, awareness to what's the whole information of the object that we are looking for. Another issue that can block us from using, right, our innate abilities, that's we face it, right? There's a dominance of those ordinary information. They are vastly all over when you want to look at this. So the intensity of information of ordinary abilities is much more intense. So it's totally common and normal that we are looking at things, we talk at things, we listen to things. Well, that's more a familiar way how to experience things. When it comes to the feeling state, you know, so most people are looking, how am I feeling? How does this make me feel right now? And if it's not feeling good, so therefore I'm not going for. Well, we need more information. That is a very short assumption. Well, that's like the animal kingdom. I'm hungry now, so therefore I'm going out for hunt now. I'm not hungry, so then therefore I'm resting. So that's animal. So the life activities are very closely connected. I mean, with their, how do I say, going for what they need. And so if you want to expand a little bit our horizon, so then we need to be able to pick up other information that is broader and brings more information in. So those informations are easily captured, as we know, by our mind oneness. Well, that doesn't matter if it's an ordinary information, so to speak, or if it's a paranormal information. It doesn't matter. So if you watch a TV, and the show and the information on the TV is more made for picking up our ordinary senses, then yes, the mind oneness entirety will pick it up. And therefore, it can be changed and can be influenced by that. So to pick up paranormal information, that's quite different. They are so much finer and so much more gentle and not so dominant as the other information. So that is an issue. And so changes in our mind, to create that entirety, right? So in our mind oneness, there is a necessity for coming to a critical point. And that critical point is needed in order to make changes in our brain. So to establish a connection between the brain cells and synapses and so on. So for that process, you need information and also you will need chi, life force energy. Without those two components, it's not so easy to make a change there. So we will need to have these things together in order to establish a new form, right? So once the connection in the brain cells and the synapses are established, then a kind of a fixed thinking process will, occur, and that's readily. That's going very fast, swiftly, so to speak, right? So that that is now the basis for how you function and for the next following activities. So higher level information are in this way more, not so intense, and they are more weaker because of we have established the other information because they have been more dominant. So that's an issue. And then there's a fourth issue that might influence us so that we are not able to use those abilities we innately have, that would be the mind oneness lacks of nourishing chi, of vital force energy. So that is actually that's an internal cause, while the other threes are more external causes. And this means that there's not enough sufficient brain chi available. So yeah, it could be that it's just not sufficiently there, or it is consumed by ordinary activities. So those are two possibilities. So we do know that the brain cells are pretty set, cannot change a lot, yet the nerve cells are responsible to provide that chi to the brain in order that we have thought processes. So if the thought activities are scattered or disorganized, then the ability of the mind oneness entirety to reflect, which is a function of it, or to react to the outside in an appropriate way, that is more reduced. So in order to reflect the entirety of an object, a certain amount of chi is required. So that's what it is. In order then to receive the complete information of the external object. So ordinary abilities information usually bring, and that's weird, right? Bring energy in. So entering into the mind oneness as an entirety, and therefore, because the chi is also there, it can bring on very fast changes. So, well, that's a little bit different when we are using our paranormal abilities or higher level abilities. So because they are able to penetrate through our human level chi in the brain, and also to the whole body, through our chi in the body, right? They can connect directly to the mind oneness entirety. Yet, it lacks on energy. That's interesting, isn't it? So even though it has the full information, but it doesn't have the full, it doesn't have the energy to it. So, and if that mind oneness chi is deficient, or the mind oneness cannot use this information that's coming from the higher level abilities, yeah, well, then you can't gather chi. So when you can't gather chi, then it cannot, really make an impact on the mind oneness entirety as a reflection, and it cannot really present itself as a readily changing process, which is necessary in order to really reflect on. So with other words, when the mind oneness entirety is clear and even, then it can reflect high level information. And however, this is still high level paranormal abilities. So we will need to train them in order to access all these objective information of the entirety that is available. So just to summarize it a little bit, just think of, I mentioned already the our judging system. If we all would have more using our paranormal abilities in order to receive the full information, our whole justice system would need to change, because the information that we would get would be quite different and would come to different assumptions than what's happening now. And we already noticed that sometimes you may have experienced it yourself already, that not everyone is right, gets right in the system, right? So it's very difficult to grow up in this set system. So we have very complicated laws and frameworks, and it gets more and more complicated. And that is a sign for when it's getting more complicated and more complicated, that it's not easy flowing, and it's not the full information inside of it. So it might be a very controversial discussion. I'm not political on that. So yet I do encourage everyone to pick up the training, so that you will be able to receive more a full set of what the external world delivers, and can make wiser decision based on your abilities to receive the information more correctly and more fully. So you will need training. We have been using our chi, our life force energy, often in the wrong way. We have been supporting the channels in our brain that is supporting the the old frames, and they are quite limited. So in order to get out of your internal prison that we as a society have been creating in society, with society, in ourselves, right, is reflected now on the outside. And it is showing on the outside it's not working so well. So in this way, we are learning that there needs to be a change made. And we have the power and the ability to gather better information, learn how to receive completely and fully the information, how to charge and energize that intention, and then to grow up together. And that's what I hope we all can do together. And I invite you to come to train with us. There's a community of people they are training. I'm teaching a specific Qigong practice. I mentioned already Sin Yang Qigong as science, preliminary step to science, to approach in scientific way, so that everyone has the ability to learn the steps and apply the steps. And when they do, they will get their results. So that's important, because most of us have been very doomed. They often had quite astonishing abilities already, but because of other people didn't encourage them or even traumatize them through their abilities, then they stopped using them. So we need to get that back. Those are good information and good abilities. They can make the changes for a new generation of people. And hope we are all a part of growing a more conscious person. So that's what I would like to see in this world. And that's what I'm practicing and training for. We are all in the same boat. So there's quite a huge effort of people going forward. And I hope you become a part of it. So that's definitely, my heart is going for that. And see you then next week. We'll see what's coming up, what you are asking for, what your comments are, or what's up for that day, right? Being more on the flow. See you, and thanks for joining. All right, you have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.